Thank you for having us tonight. I feel like I'm at an open age baseball game, a lot of seats, but nobody here. And so, do you feel like one people are coming? It's not too excited. If you turn to page 5 on our board report, Approval is doing fine as a corporation. We have $76,000 in bank account. We show on the next line $141,000 in reserve. The negative $114,000 means we're giving specific money for capital. And so we've actually put $141,000 in the investment fund that's kind of operational. So we should only have $26,000. We only have $26,000 of capital. We spoke about it before. Operationally, we're fine, capital wise, but we've got it there right now. In the normal days, it was a very lucrative investment tool. Right now, we're holding on simply because, as bonds mature, etc. There's no sense calling that money at this point, put it in the bank account, because we'll lose some interest on it at this point. Accounts receivable, Dawn is showing $17,000. He updated that. I apologize. Yes, we have an updated age receivables. Currently, so this report is done at the end of the month. By the 20th of the month, we rerun the report. We allow HST, GST, baby bonuses, etc. We are down to $7,800 currently, which only $1,300 or more than 60 days overdue. So under 60 days, like 2 months later, credit card is not good. After that, we get married. We are doing court actions on people. We do have one person that may end up that route. Often they come up with money, but we really have pushed $100. I would say in my situation, it's at high risk at this point. That's part of the business. It's not like I would say that's within our standards for sure. Carrying back to page 5. Yukon County at the end of last year, we believe we owed the district of the county of $121,000. Subsidy of $28,000. We get subsidy on September, but they pay it on October 1st. They always pay the subsidy a day late because that's the day the mortgages come in. So I'm sure the mortgages don't balance. HST receivable, we get about 90% HST we pay. There's always a balance there. We collect it every 6 months, but it builds up to 22,000, drops down to 9,000, builds up. So there's about $14,000. There's nothing material on the long-term liabilities other than at the very bottom page, our mortgage is now down to $720,000, which is the price of a very average house in Shelburne, and that's where our full apartment goes. So we have about 2 years left in our agreement. And then on page 6, so the reserve fund was showing $26,000 in that balance, $163,000 of accumulated surplus. It seems like a lot as a nonprofit, but over 30 years in business, that average is about $2,500 a year. You like that money, obviously, in case of a rainy day, and we are short capital, so we can use that money if we need it tomorrow. Next page is we're traditional in January to December, so this is a good picture of our year end. There's 2 columns there: year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget. Mine is highlighted. Dawn and I were looking at some of yours aren't highlighted. I did okay. Yeah, it's funny that the photocopying, same report. So the only things I would point out is about 1/3 of the way down, interest income, $4,300. The year-to-date budget is $1,100. We do get 4.5% interest on our bank account right now because we have a corporate account. So that's a material amount of money. About halfway on the page, general building line 6401. The budget is $34,009. We're at $16,009. It's really a reflection of vacancies. So right now, like that's kind of our slush fund when we're doing everything. So being under is a good thing, a very good thing. It's not always the norm, but at this point we are under. Also, if you look at line 6203, waste removal, the budget is $6,700, we're at $10,000. We have a contract, but they have fuel surcharges. And so I'm going to start, if I ever start a new world, I'm going to start giving stuff for cheap, but charge fuel surcharges. Because, it's just, I understand that's a cost, but it seems, we're up 50% over budget. And that's a lot of fuel. And then the other line I just point out would be water and sewage line 6105, about 2/3 of the way down. The budget is 25 or 31,000. That's because we pay the water bill. We get all, and then it comes back. So if you're wondering why we're over, we would then go back for about 4,000 of that. So we're just slightly over the water. And then if we flip to the next page, here's the bottom line. the net surplus, we're showing $28,000. There will be a reconciliation at the end of the year, but we generally make about $25,000. I'm kind of confident that's what we're targeting for at this point this year.
Any questions on that?
We also at this meeting have to approve our operating budget for the next year. I give a lot of information here. I do have a history major in life, but I like kind of seeing what I take on certain years before across stop there. I didn't take out any years in particular, like because those were good years values. But it's kind of interesting to go back since we have it to 2009. Again, I have mine highlighted. Did the highlighting come through? Okay, because I tried to highlight interesting articles like halfway across snow removal. We do want to point out, we're going to talk about that in the financials. Last year at $15,000, the same company this year is looking at $20,000. And we have one full time contract with other people, but as you know, it's getting a harder and harder industry to find people, etc. A couple lines further on, I did highlight waste removal because it looks like $15,000 back in 2019, not that long ago when the world was simpler. We were 6485. But that's what I'm saying, that's quite an increase, but I'm sure are we missing something? You don't have a copy of the budget? I have one right here, if that's okay. Does nobody else have a copy of the budget? Okay, thank you. Walter and I do have the highlighted one, so. I just tried to point out, the landscaping, I also highlighted that because we only pay $5,000 a year now. We used to pay about 11,000. That's what we have Dan. We pay Dan to do it now. It helps him out financially, and obviously he's able to do it more competitively. So, and if you look at the bottom line, I'm projecting a $21,000 surplus. I mean, I think that's a realistic, knock on wood, because things can change, but if we should be able to achieve these targets unless things go unusual in that year. And just for simplicity, I'll just carry on for the report. And so there's nothing else too material. The snow removal maintenance contract is in there under snow removal. And we did reach out to several companies when we deal with Orangeville. They want to come up here. Again, nobody's looking for it in the snow industry. So and we were happy with the company. So I mean, we're looking at $20,000. There's a couple of vacant units coming up, nothing too material there. That's normal for our industry to have vacant units. We have a couple moving out, but we do have 2 items for new business. Just just that we have something to add. Okay. First item of new business is just we have some paving repairs at the front of the parking lot where you go in, typical with the curb fits and everything. So we have a price of $3,500 in billables or $6,500 to do a saw cut, do it better, do it more proper. So we're looking for a course direction that again, we're not getting a lot of quotes out there, but it'd be $6,500 from the saw cut, the 2 front areas, and replace it with paving. I mean, you still pay word for that amount of money, but those days are gone. And then the second item is we talked about oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. So I dumped it there. And then we talked about the gutter, like doing the gutters, our last meeting, looked at that. So, we had a company Dan gave us and a company that Walter gave us. The company that Walter gave us, I don't know, they're funny, they're all keen on coming at 7 o'clock and then they canceled, like they canceled, rescheduled it, didn't show up, it's all good, I mean, so we did have one company come and, yes, I apologize, we brought those on the way down. And, it was gonna be $8,000 just to clean the gutters and $12,000 to do the apartment, and we didn't get a price for the townhouses. We have looked at this, like, as you remember, in the spring, we had a lot of heavy rains, like a lot of, we have been monitoring, like, Dan, we kind of told Dan, keep a really close eye on that. We just think anytime there's any water leakage, it's just low, like, it's all of those peaks and valleys. And we don't think those eaves, especially at the front, are dirty, you know, full of junk. We just think they're just on heavy rains, they are leaking, but on a normal, like, our belief at this point is, we'd like we're gonna buy a drone next year for all our nonprofits, kind of go up and take better pictures of the eaves. But we don't believe at this point it's necessary, that they're full of junk, you know, like, there may be some accumulation, but, we all summer dances, we haven't had those big rains. As he goes out every time, he says there's never leaking like that, but again, a heavy rain will overload them, you know, because there's like one pipe for them. So we're thinking at this point, $12,000 to put on the gutter guard seems like a lot of money for building, like, and then like the townhouses as well. We just not sure it's money well spent until we get a better look, you know, with the drone flying up there and going, water dirty, like super dirty, or what are they at this point? So we'd ask permission to carry on until the spring. We'll bring some pictures and a better update of, we're gonna do this, you know, I'm gonna buy one for all the nonprofits to look.
And I spoke with Trevor just briefly before we get started, so he and I want to include a board orientation handbook in the package. Rather than go through that and go, I just suggested, in there, if there are any questions, here's more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was wrong.
Email.
I printed too, so you're welcome to. Nope. Oh, sorry.
Just to follow up on the front entrance way. We talked about
Yes, so we are, yeah, so we're getting funding, coaching funding, doing the agreement with Dublin County. They're trying to figure out, they're gonna give us more money, but they're giving us money to do the parquet, the top part, and it'll be much improvement, yes. So, just whether we'll get to it, like whether we get the money and everything done in time for the fall, or whether we wait until early spring.
And the park as well, how's that?
The park, the playground will be removed,
Yeah.
and it's next year, okay, perfect.
So next meeting, what?
January traditionally we meet again.
April 29th.
Dave.
You sure you know what time after the holidays?
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Okay, I'll. Okay, you are, you got all that in order. 45. Last night, now, public meeting being held under section 45 Planning Act for the T1 variance applications. The first application is B23-03 and response to the -473. The purpose of this application is request to meet from section 2.6.172 with zoning bylaw 38/2007. Permit a 2.2-meter planting strip adjacent to a residential zone and a 2-meter planting strip adjacent to a public, whereas 3 meters is typically required. Second application is 8.3-4, and that is the property located at 2.9 Street. And the purpose of this application is to request relief from section 3.2.4 zoning bylaw 8/7 to permit a golfing encroachment of 2.5 meters in the front yard, whereas 1.5 meters is typically and relief as well in section 4.2.2 to permit an interior side yard setback of 0.55 meters, whereas the current minimum is 1.2. Now, after court,
No, just put it that, advertising will be useful, so and probably it was even rated,
well, the presentation from our town planner, Steve Weaver, will do each application separately. After Steve made a presentation, we'll entertain questions about the committee, as well as public for here. I think in both cases, the applicants or the representatives, the applicants are present, so they may have some additional information to add. After all the input gathered.
Thank you, Chair Mills. So the first application is A2303. We do have representatives of BH Architects here who represent the owner of 407 Owen Sound Street. The existing property is shown on the second slide of the presentation, included in the addendum package. There's an existing dental office on the property, a 2-story building. You can see the existing building stuck up against the north edge of the property with 2 separate parking. You can see the existing buildings tucked up against the north edge of the property with 2 separate parking areas to the south. Main parking area is accessed by a driveway kind of in the center of the property off of Town Street, and the other parking area is off the mainway behind the building. The reason they're somewhat separated is there's a bit of a grade difference between Sound Street and the lane. And so the way that the applicants are proposing to redevelop the site is to shift the parking to the north side of the site to provide a bit better layout. For context, we've included some street view images of the existing conditions. So the top image is looking from kind of the northwest corner of the property towards the existing building in the main parking area. And you can see there's a bit of a planting strip of grass area between the existing parking in Town Street and the existing boulevard tree there in the town property. And then on the north side of the property, adjacent to the side of the building there really isn't any trees or anything, but a bit of a lawn area at the side of the property just north. And at the bottom image just shows the length of the parking interface with Owen Sound Street currently. So there is quite a long existing planting strip there that's a bit narrower than the bylaw requires. The other purpose of the bottom image is just to show that the driveway on the property to the south, actually it does encroach a little bit on the property for the dental office, but it will be left in its current location with the proposed redevelopment plan. But that driveway location is one reason why there's a bit of a narrow strip between the parking area and that driveway. So that'll be widened a little bit in the new development to provide more space between the existing residential driveway and the new building. The next slide shows the site plan drawing that was filed with this minor variance application. As you can see, the building's been shifted to the south. The plan is to keep the existing dental office operating while the new building is built. So that will require some interim parking arrangements in the meantime, and then ultimately the existing building will be removed once the new building is completed, just so they can maintain continuity of business. We will make sure that that is appropriately addressed through the site plan application and agreement. For now, the minor variance application is specifically for those two red areas that are kind of circled with a cloud line around them on the plan. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see the details of that. So proposed variance number 1, and granted the image has been turned 90 degrees from the north is to the left on this image, is there's a slightly reduced planting strip proposed for basically the length of the parking space adjacent to the driveway. And the reason for that is in order to meet the required parking and accommodate the new parking layout as proposed, as well as the accessible parking space requirement and the access aisle that goes with that, a bit of a reduced width of that planting strip is proposed. It's pretty minor because we look back to the original image, the entire length of the existing parking area is along the frontage of the property. And in this case, you'll only really see the driveway and a bit of the parking spaces from the side. And then the second part of the variance is in the southeast corner of the property. And similarly, a slightly reduced planting strip is proposed there. One of the reasons it's a bit narrower there is parking space is at a bit of an angle to the lot line. The lot line is runs on an angle on the south of the property. So it does only result in one parking space that's slightly closer to the residential property to the south. I did note in the report that normally, if this were a residential property, that parking space could be right up against the lot line. And the purpose of these planting strips for commercial parking lots is to make sure large parking areas aren't directly adjacent to residential parking lots. So in this case, we're not really concerned that there's just one parking space up against that lot line. These parking spaces we generally used for staff, is our understanding. And then just the last point I'll make on the second variance is that there is a grade differential there, property to the south, so it actually goes up a few. So that helps to mitigate the reduction of the planting strip because the property to the south is higher. It's not that the parking space is kind of overlooking the adjoining property, it's the opposite. So overall, I think this will be a significant improvement to the existing conditions. It'll be a brand new building. The design of which is shown on the next slide, the rendering provided by the architects. The interface of the parking areas with Owen Sound Street and the property to the south will be reduced. To give you a sense of where the landscaping efforts will be focused, you can see that on the next slide, which shows the landscape plan and some of the images of the types of plants that have been chosen. There'll be a row of trees planted along the north boundary adjacent to that existing residential property. Just to the south of that, you can see the lawn area with a small planting strip between the barrier free parking space along Sound Street, and then kind of wrapping around the west and south side of the building. There'll be additional gardens and lawn areas to help make an attractive appearance and buffer the use from any residential property. So I think it's a good plan. We have provided an assessment of this application under the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and we believe it does meet those 4 tests that are outlined in our report. We circulated the application to all agencies. We didn't receive any objections. There were no public comments as of now, but we're here to listen to any comments that the public may have today. And we did recommend one condition of approval, and that's simply to link this back to those 2 specific planting strips that the variance would be for, and that it wouldn't be across the entire frontage of the property, just for a small section of it. And similarly for the residential lot line to the south, it would just be for a 6 meter length and just a short section of it, 6.7 meters in total. This links it to the site plan application so that this variance wouldn't have any effect until the site plan is ultimately approved. We are very close to finalizing the site plan in conjunction with this, and the applicant's looking forward to getting started very soon. So with that, I'll pause there for any questions, and we can refer those to the applicants as well at the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any questions from committee? Dan?
Just a quick question. The parking, the lower parking is still gonna stay where it is? Is that what I see in the plan? It's just hard for me to read it. I was trying to pull it up on my computer too. So the existing parking that's at the rear off the lane is gonna stay there. And the new parking would be where the house is located or the building is located now. Are they gaining parking spots, square footage wise?
It'll be a more efficient layout because now this parking will have delineated spaces, whereas right now, there's a bit of delineation in the main parking area, but the one off the back is just kind of a irregularly shaped gravel area.
Right.
I went by there today to see cars are parking at different angles and it's not very efficient. So the main change will be that the main parking area will go right through between the lane and Sound Street, but that's an improvement. It reduces the amount of parking you see from one Sound Street. But then the parking spaces off the lane will be directly off the lane instead of kind of going in.
And going into an area
A circular area and trying to park, you just park right into, the number of spaces.
Right.
5 total on there.
Yeah, I do remember correctly, it's still, the whole lot is raised at the front towards Owen Sound side anyways, right?
Yes.
So when you have that new parking lot extended to the lane side, that's all gonna be retaining walls and everything like
Yeah,
that.
there's no grading there, but in the southeast corner, it'll still be over area.
Okay, are they grading it down so you have access out of there, or is it gonna be just a built up level with Owen Sound?
It's basically sloped down.
It's gonna stay down.
Yeah.
Big level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else in the committee? Any public questions or comments? Anything you'd like to add or?
Thanks, yeah.
No, okay. All right. Well, if there are no further questions then, so the recommendation is to grant the relief with the one condition that Steve did. Sorry, yeah.
I do remember the question too. So existing building is gonna be still open for dental, new buildings gonna be built. You're working on parking for customers. Where do you think that's gonna happen?
Basically, the site plan agreement will require a construction plan that will show where the temporary parking will be provided. I think it'll be possible, it may be slightly conditioned on the total parking required, but it'll be all on the lane, basically, just coming right in off the lane, the both spaces.
There's nothing on Owen Sound there, is there?
No, so
No.
it won't want any parking off of Golden Sound, during that switch over, yeah.
Last call. Okay. All right, so as I was saying, Steve's recommendation is to grant the relief as requested with that one condition. Is there anybody inclined to move and second that? By member Donato, seconded by member Sample. Okay, so the motion will read, after considering the application, committee is satisfied that the request is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate and continued use of the subject property, and maintains the general intent and purpose of zoning bylaw and official plan. Accordingly, the committee resolves to grant the request. The minor variance is granted in accordance with the site plan provided to the committee and attached here too, subject to the following condition. Number one, that relief from the minimum planting strip width requirement shall be limited to one planting strip located at the southeast corner of the lot along the south lot line between the parking spaces accessed from the rear lane and the residential lot to the south, having a length of 6.7 meters, and one planting strip along the front or west lot line between the parking area and Owen Sound Street, and having a length of 6 meters in accordance with an approved site plan. All in favor? That's carried. Okay.
So the next application.
Sorry, Steve, just 1 second.
I think I should probably declare for the next one, just because Jeff did work
Ah,
at this location. So
okay.
I think it'd be smart for me to just
Sure, yep, okay,
go.
it's noted.
I know.
Take your phone so we can call.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
So the next one, 82304, the applicant is Darren White, who's here with us as well to answer any questions for 229 and Randy Street. Similar to the last application, I just prepared a few slides to illustrate the existing conditions as well as the proposal. So the first slide just shows the air photo, where you can see the existing buildings kind of tucked into the northwest corner of the property. This is an existing two-story dwelling. And there are some parking areas both to the east of the house and also the side laneway to the south of the house. There has historically been a front deck. There was an existing one, which you can see on the pictures on the next slide. If that had recently been replaced to the same dimensions as the existing. The existing was legal non-compliant, so basically it existed before the zoning bylaw was established, and the zoning bylaw established a side yard requirement and a front yard requirement that the existing didn't quite meet. And you can see, of course, on the two images that there is a door on the second level of the house as well that doesn't go to anywhere right now. So obviously there had to be a balcony at some point. We don't know how big it was. It didn't have any photos that went back that far. But the proposal is to build it to the same dimensions as the front, the lower level deck. And the lower level deck has been constructed to accommodate that. And the purpose of the variance is to allow the encroachment of the balcony to exceed what is permitted by the zoning bylaw. The reason that's required is because the house is closer to the front lot line than the zoning bylaw requires. And normally, the zoning bylaw limits a balcony to a 1.5 meter encroachment into the front yard. And in this case, this in order to be the same size as the lower level deck or porch, this balcony would be 2.5 meters between the front wall of the house and the front of the balcony. The other purpose of the variance, and these are illustrated on both the site plan and then the one with the roll up on the next slide, is just showing that the side lot line along the laneway runs at an angle to the house. And as a result of that, it gets narrower between the level deck and the side of the house, and the side lot line. At its narrowest point, it's a little less than about 2 feet, 0.55 meters. And the minimum side yard of the zone is 1.2 meters. So in order to permit the proposed deck, then it could be the same size as the lower level deck. A variance is required to reduce the required side yard. I reviewed that with the town engineers as well as with Jim Moss. And they are satisfied that there's adequate space there to maintain the laneway and access the services within that laneway if they need to be replaced in the future, as well as for winter maintenance. And just to be clear on that, this will stay within the private property. It won't approach into the town laneway at all. But we just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be circumstance where snow got pushed into the private property and damaged the deck or something. So we were satisfied with that. Similar to the last application, it was circulated to the required agencies and there were no objections. We have not received any public comments so far on this application, and obviously we're here to do that tonight. So that's my report and presentation, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Questions from the committee? Member Benato.
Question. Is the owner deciding to give up and move into town from the lake?
I don't think the applicant is the owner. The applicant's here as an agent, I believe.
So that would change my decision.
Maybe a few up here nervous about their seat next election. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, any questions from the public or comments? Anything to add? No. Right, so the recommendation on this one as well is to grant the relief requested. Mover and seconder by Member Hall, seconded by Bouchardy. Okay. All right, so the motion reads, after considering the application, the committee is satisfied that the request is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate and continued use of the subject property, and maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and official plan. The application is approved, which permits one 8.59 meter by 2.51 meter balcony, 2.5 meters from the front property line, and 0.55 meters from the interior side yard lot line, as shown on the drawings provided by the applicant. And that's carried. Great. That's it for tonight, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn Committee of Adjustments? Moved by Benado, seconded by Fegan. All in favor? It's carried. All right.
I text her.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, folks. Give them a second, please, before we fire up the national anthem. Okay, so our regular agenda call to order at 7:07, and we'll begin with the playing of the national anthem. We'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. And it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways and resources. We encourage residents to review the call to action information, which can be found on the links which are on the town's website. If any member of council has a pecuniary interest with respect to any item on tonight's regular agenda, that can be declared now or declared as the item arises through the agenda. On to our minutes. Could have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes from our regular council meeting from September 25th. Was our special meeting of October the 2nd. Otto, seconded by Councillor Wagner. Any discussion on either set of minutes? All in favor? It's carried. Question period. Any questions from the gallery? Looks like everybody's cleared out. Or any questions submitted?
No, sir.
Okay. No presentations tonight. Council inquiries. Councillor Bernardo.
I did speak with our director of works. Greenwood and Old Village Lane has an issue with sight line between Robert Street and Old Village Lane. There's a bend in there, there's a tree in the way. It's difficult to see traffic coming from northbound on there. And
Sorry, I'm trying to place this Old Village Lane and Park
Robert
Avenue.
Street coming north towards Old Village Lane, you've got a bend in the road
At Park Avenue there
on Greenwood.
on Greenwood. Okay, yes,
Okay, you
yeah,
got a bend in the road, you got a tree, the sight line is terrible,
Yeah.
especially coming out of Old Village Lane. And traffic does start up from the stop sign and pick up speed going northbound. If you're trying to come out of Old Village Lane going north, it's one of these days, or one of these, I'm gonna get hit. I'm wondering if we can put up a sign there, hidden intersection. So that it warns people there is an intersection in that area, even, you know, so the traffic doesn't, come there at, full speed and hit somebody coming through out of Old Village Lane. And it's also difficult when you're trying to come out, not being able to see what's coming at you from, Robert. So that's issue one. Issue two, we did put in a request for more disabled parking in the downtown core. And again, speaking with our director, the feeling is that we're going to lose a lot of regular parking spots. I'm still looking for additional parking, disabled parking spots, at least one, if not more, on the east side of the stop lights going towards Victoria and William. There is nothing currently in that area at all coming in either north or south. If we can't have more, at least one there.
Okay.
Line painting on Greenwood Street for bicycle lanes. We've been talking about slowing down traffic. One of the greatest ways to slow down traffic is to put in lines between where we have our signage for bicycle lanes right now. Narrow the street down a little bit. It'll slow traffic down coming in that way and will give more comfort to people on bicycles on the street. I'm wondering if council is willing to consider that. That's also been a request.
so you mean to actually paint
Paint
a bike
line
lane?
and separate where the bicycles actually go to where
Narrow the street.
the street
We're
is.
doing a traffic calming
Yeah.
in November, all of that will be addressed.
Okay,
Okay. And the final one, I've had a request from residents, and I again spoke with our director for a stop sign at Robert Street. I know it's been looked at. The request says that there were issues at some points with kids crossing the street at that area. And they're looking for a
On the Robert Street.
three-way stop sign there. And also, there's a blind person that lives within the area, and again, a concern with being able to cross the street at that. So I'll leave it at that. That was just a request that came.
remember a couple of years ago, we did put the crosswalk
Yeah.
signs, I think, on
Yeah,
both sides.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I assume that's something else, maybe that
Yeah. So
include in that report.
yeah, we also have a formal request for stop signs or walks as part of our protocol.
Okay,
So residents need to actually complete those requests.
And that's the end of my request.
all right. Anybody else? Counselor Sample.
I'm not sure if Brad brought it up or not. But, a few weeks ago, I was out at Fiddle Park with him, helping him get the stoves going and the pilot lights lit for a rental that was gonna happen out there. The stove and the hot plate are pretty deteriorated and pretty like beat up. I'd probably recommend looking at taking everything that's in there out. If we're gonna use it as a kitchen rental and just put in regular stoves and then have a barbecue that they can use on the outside. Cause it's beat up on the inside. All the grills are rusty and flaky and the hot plate itself is deteriorated. So I don't know if Brad brought it into yours or not, but I said I would bring it up and I actually forgot the last one. Fiddle Park Kitchen. So I'm not sure how many rentals we do have in there that you actually use the kitchen, but if we do, then we should look at something different. I know we're looking at Rex and all that kind of stuff, but it's a short-term win for us as a clean kitchen over there, because it is pretty bad.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else? Okay. All right, so on to our first report, report from our CAO regarding the Firemark program. So it's sort of a revisit for this back to the pre-COVID days, but I'll turn it over to Denise.
Thanks, Mayor Mills. So through the mayor, as noted that we were requested in 2020 to look at this, and that was just before COVID actually touched down. So there was a bit of a delay in this, and the direction was to move forward with an agreement so that we would actually be one of the municipalities in Ontario, which there are many, participating with the Firemark program in order to recover costs associated with structure fires and other related incidents. So what we've done is outline the background on the program. We're aware that many municipalities obviously are participating in this program. I can attest to that from a former municipality that I was involved with in its success. So in attendance with us tonight is Mr. Chris Carrier with Firemark, and our Shelburne District Fire Chief, Mr. Ralph Snyder, is here as well. The original presentation which Firemark gave back in 2020 is provided to you in the link. Additionally, they did provide us with a recent update. There's minimal changes between those two presentations, so it just provides you again with the background on the program. So the essence of the program is it allows the municipality to recover costs associated with an incident or fire with respect to perils. And the list of insurable perils is provided to you in terms of what would be eligible in terms of the town of Shelburne being able to seek out some of those costs associated with the fire department's expenses related to providing the service to support fire. There's no potential revenue projected in terms of the approach that we've taken. What you want is no revenue to be achieved because you don't want any fires. But in effect, if you are going to have costs associated with the provision of that service, whereby those coverage costs are embedded in the insurance, which is held by the owner, it makes strategic and financial sense in order for us to recover some of those costs. The cost recovery is not about making a revenue stream. What it does, though, is provide the opportunity for the recovery to then be rededicated back to the operating and or capital costs for the municipality, namely in this case, the town of Shelburne. As we all know, the makeup of the Shelburne and District Fire Department is quite unique. I have outlined how that composition based on the average call per year or 3-year call for service is structured. Shelburne's costs are about 54% of the overall budget. So any calls within the town of Shelburne would be 100% recoverable by us. And those administrative costs would be completed by Firemark, with the information being remitted through the Shelburne and District Fire Department to them on our behalf. As noted, the 2023 contribution for the town of Shelburne was about $640,000. And based on the relationship with Firemark, any recoverable is comprised of 30% of the recovery remaining with Firemark, and that the other 70% will be provided to the town of Shelburne, whereby we would dedicate those revenues to our fire-related costs. As I noted, no potential revenues are being estimated because we don't, without further analysis on what we could have recovered, want to make that kind of estimate. The goal is to make sure that some revenue is generated where it is eligible to support future costs, but not certainly to create a revenue projection where if it wasn't realized, we would have a shortfall. So as I mentioned, the updated presentation or information on the Firemark program is provided in Appendix 1. Additionally, as part of the relationship, there needs to be a number of agreement or one agreement formalized, and that's provided in Appendix 2. Additionally, we need to enter in 2 specific bylaws. One is the enter into the agreement bylaw, and the second is to ensure that we have the authority to recover any costs associated with those policies to allow those Firemark to proceed down those directions in order to solidify what potentially would be recoverables that we are eligible to incur or receive. As I mentioned, both Chris and Ralph are here. If there's any specific questions about either, I guess, the incidents that we've had from a fire perspective over the last couple of years in terms of the types of fires or anything specific to the coverage within the agreement and what we would actually be entitled to, Mr. Carrier is in a better position than myself to answer that. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions related to the town of Shelburne, and that concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. Chris or Chief Snyder, did you want to add anything specifically or?
Your worship, I've dealt with this as well as Denise has in former municipalities and found it somewhat beneficial. It's not a huge money generator, but it is nice that if you do have a structure fire, you do get some.
Okay.
But a nice comment, if I could make.
Sure.
We would have had revenue many years ago if we had passed it. When I first brought it up many years ago, but unfortunately, the council of today wasn't interested. I'm finally gonna say I'm glad that it has come forward, and I'm prepared to move the motion.
Okay. There's a seconder for that. Okay, moved by Benado, seconded by Fegan. So just to be clear, the motion receives the CAO's report, approves and authorizes the agency agreement between the town of Shelburne and Firemark Inc. and provides for 2 bylaws, the first of which is for the agreement itself, and the second is to allow for cost recovery fees. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? That's carried. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Stick around for the rest of the meeting if you want.
Thank you very much. No.
I'm very interested, but thank you now.
All right. Okay, good night. Thanks. So next report is also from our CAO, and it's regarding our 2023 weekend transit ridership.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. So as we have the budget framework report tonight, and given the financial costs associated with the program, we wanted to make sure that council had all the information with respect to that deliverable to ensure that you're making strategic financial decisions on the directions that we have going forward. So as everybody is aware that the weekend service was an add-on to the weekday service that we provide through our partnership with Grey County. And actually, we don't provide it all. I should clarify, we benefit as a municipality, which service actually literally goes through. And that service is at no charge to the town of Shelburne. It runs potentially from Owen Sound all the way to Orangeville. The majority of Shelburne users, from we understand from the weekday service, is they are en route to Orangeville or beyond to connect into either go from the Orangeville system, and then they continue on to wherever they may be. We had reviewed in 2022 the process at that time when we had at that 4 stops within the town of Shelburne on the weekend. And it was thought that those 4 stops of the continuation to Orangeville might be strategically reviewed to ensure that we had a more highly concentrated opportunity within mobility intertown. So we did review that, and we looked at then the establishment of 14 stops running on a 30-minute loop for 5 hours a day within Shelburne. Focus was primarily to provide access to the commercial development on our eastern part of the town. There were supports, or at least, I guess, comments that if people didn't have access with the relocation of Foodland, that this would certainly provide them with greater ability to travel to that location, knowing as well that we have enough grocery store no frills at that intersection. So it's, I think, important to note that in 2023, unfortunately, even with the change in what we believe is a significantly enhanced approach, additionally, significant promotions, advertising, and I guess awareness was the responsibility of the town of Shelburne, and we did undertake that, I believe, in a fairly aggressive manner. That the Great County's program for summer 2023, for the most part, was based on what was entitled Fare Free Access. None of the revenues from this ridership, even at $5 or $4.50, or any of the other established fees, were the revenue of the town of Shelburne, and that was totally understood as part of the agreement we did when we launched the weekend service for the fee. The ridership for April 29th to the most recent weekend, which was last weekend, 7/8, has been 81 people. So the unfortunate reality is that that cost is in the range of $40,000 to date, which means that the operating subsidy, if that's like how we actually approach it in terms of understanding the cost, is about $494 per ride. When we did it in 2022, the average subsidy was in the $90 range at that point, and that was based on knowing that, though, the majority of people that were riding it were going on to Orangeville, obviously. So we wanted to make sure that council was aware of this, knowing that your council priorities have placed a high priority on looking at those kind of connectivities. What I didn't get into this report is alternative solutions, whereby there could be CHIT programs with taxis. There could be ride share programs established. There could be subsidy provided for those in financial need based on eligibility to be taking Uber, for example. That's a much larger undertaking, but because the budget framework needed to have a target for council's direction, I thought it would be critical that you have this information before you tonight as well, just to make sure that any direction that you're providing to us, as I mentioned, is something you're basing on as much information as possible as we go forward. So attached for you as well is the existing route. And I think you had comments the last time about the squiggly, so that was corrected, so that there was no concern that it didn't turn around. Additionally, what we did undertake was providing you with a summary of businesses within Shelburne that provide either free delivery or delivery for a fee, with some of those services also being provided for just outside of the boundary of the town of Shelburne. So we thought that that was also important because there are food-based services that will deliver, whether for free or fee, pharmacy as well. And based on the ridership to date, it would appear that the need to utilize this for food may not be to the level that we originally anticipated was required, with a total of 81 riders to date on weekend. That doesn't preclude that maybe people are using it weekday to access food services in another municipality, but that certainly wasn't part of what this initiative was intended to support. And I think what, as staff, that we recognize that that level of subsidy in any type of program is certainly significant and something that we would identify that needs to be fully evaluated with respect to future directions. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions, Councillor Fegan?
Just out of curiosity, is there any reason that we can assume for drop in ridership between June to July or from August to September? Is there anything that happened between those 2 months or those 4 months that we can correct me wrong?
We're not sure. We had one long weekend in July and there's no service on stat holidays. Additionally, a lot of people might be out of town in July, but we never drilled down to that level because the numbers are so, I guess, minimal that you just see the total. These are the total riderships per month, and again, the ridership was no charge until after the long weekend in September.
Councillor Fernando?
During the election, there was a lot of requests for this, and I know I brought it forward at one point during council. little disappointed to see that it wasn't utilized as we thought it would be utilized. I can't support continuing forward with it at this point. It was more the seniors at Simon Street that when we went through the apartments that had made the request, and I'm gathering that it was never utilized by them. We thought it was utilized, so. But again, I can't support going forward with it. It's too costly, and as indicated, there's enough services that provide for food, if that's what the request or shopping that will deliver. So if they need to get there, they'll get there. Seeing the bus go through the rest of town, most everyone else in the rest of town has a vehicle or some form. They already do. They have someone they can rely on or a taxi or whatever to get to where they need to get to. So I think that we've tried, it doesn't work. And at this point, I need support going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tough when you look at $500 subsidy per ride. You know, it's a lot of other services that could be provided for that kind of money. So, and I know that this sort of bleeds into the next report a little bit, but the budget framework, which we're going to discuss in a few minutes, contemplates a 6% increase. And I'm assuming that includes leaving this in.
Yes, it
Right,
is.
okay. Yeah, so that's a $91,000 budget item, which, you know, very, very
Close to 1%.
yeah, comes very close to being a 1% impact on the budget. So, I mean, Carrie's, I think, prepared the framework for tonight, but I think when we get into budget discussions, that's one area that we can look at and
I think
talk about.
I think we should cut it some now. I don't see it going forward at all further. There's
Yeah.
no point
It's
setting
true.
it forward and continuing to drain money out of something that we can put money into better usage.
Would you prefer to do that
So
procedurally?
through the mayor, procedurally, I think the direction should go with the treasurer's report on the budget framework, because we're asking for direction for a budget maximum based on the tax rate. If you wish us to change that and adjust it, then that adjustment can be made based on an elimination of a cost that would probably bring it down to 5. Additionally, I would need direction because I did reference in the report that currently the agreement is till the end of January 31st, 2024. But there is potential, which would obligate us to have 1 month of costs in the 2024 budget. However, there is the flexibility within the existing agreement to not only extend it, but to end it early. So and as a courtesy, we would have to ensure that Grey County and their operating partner were advised of that so that they could make the necessary changes that the existing service would not continue past December 31st, 2023.
So the motion to advise Green County that we are ending it. As early as possible.
I think with Carrie's report and you make those adjustments to any budget framework directions that you give us, you could make an amendment as well to give me direction to ask that and to ask Grey County or advise them that our intent is to lease the service for weekend effective December 31st, 2023.
Just thinking, why don't we add that part to this report? So we'll receive this report and instruct staff to advise Grey County that, as you said, it's our intent to sort of discontinue that relationship as of December 31st. And then when we get into the budget framework, we can talk about making that adjustment. So, okay. So in terms of this report, then can I have a motion to receive the report and to provide staff the direction to advise Grey County? Moved by Councillor Fegan, seconded by Bernardo. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, and then on to the budget framework. Carrie?
You're the mayor. Feels like I was just here doing this.
Hmm.
Here we are again. So, the agenda package. Budget framework report, the staff implemented in 2020. And it proved to be a very beneficial document for us to prepare a budget for you and check with everyone on the same page as far as expectations go. So in the budget that the staff have been working on, a change of 1% in the estimated levy is approximately $99,876. And that is up from last year of just over 90,000. This amounts to 9.8% increase in the tax levy, which is what we were actually very close to what we actually projected when we were doing the 2023 budget. So we're just over an additional $1.1 million in tax dollars. But because we have our assessment growth on our side still, that it helps to offset tax levy or tax rate increase to 3.6. Or sorry, growth was 3.6. So that makes our tax rate 6%. On the bottom of page 2, I've indicated that a 6% increase in the tax rate on an average home assessment is approximately $158 or $13.19. And I do have 5% figures for you if you want to discuss that once we've finished this presentation. So the unavoidable cost drivers are all the normal things that we don't have any control over, including the impact assessment, legislative changes such as Bill 23, mandatory employer payroll contributions, to which there is a significant increase in CPP starting in 2024. There is a new additional CPP contribution for any earnings over 70,100 that the employers must match. We also have the third-party contracts that are tied to CPI. At this point, we don't know what September's CPI rate is going to be, but at the end of August, it was 4%. The local boards of management that are included in this draft budget, we are estimating, because we don't have everybody's budgets in yet, that the increase that we're seeing on the bottom line is just under 300,000. 2.8% of our 6% increase is all attributed to the local boards of management, and that includes the CRC, the arena, the library, and VCA and the BIA. As far as grant funding goes, it is too early in the season for this information. Historically, we receive our OMPF letter in November, and we have been told that the OCIF funding this probably won't be released until December. In the past, it was customary to utilize Ontario CPI rates as our standard for COLA increases, and this practice was not appropriate in 2022 or 2023 because of the inflation increases that we were experiencing, and this same acknowledgement applies for 2024. So the draft budget has included a 3% salary increase for all staff effective January 2020. And the next section in the report is building responsive organizational capacity. So I'll let the CAO speak to that section.
Thanks, Carrie, through the mayor. So in 2022, we did a number of reviews. We completed our service delivery review and we completed an operations review. Flowing out of those analysis was the need to have the support to continue to enhance services. So now that we've completed the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, it reinforces the need to have that operations analyst, as well as, even though it was in the ops review, a utilities labor, which is not in the operating budget, it is in the tax support, it's in the user pay budget, so utilities, but the positions were recommended through the operations review. Additionally, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan identified a number of program recreational opportunities, whether indoor or outdoor, and how to provide a more responsive approach to some of the, I guess, needs of our community related to recreation. I think some of the comments from council in the past is you heard these kind of comments through your door knocking exercises during the election. So we have included, as we indicated we would, through the Parks and Rec Master Plan, which was just presented on September 25th, one position to help us facilitate that kind of growth. And we've added the special events as was outlined because that will help support some of the initiatives where we're struggling right now, where staff outside of their regular, say, responsibilities are helping on site with many events, whether they be town or committee. What's not noted here is certainly we think there's some capacity, maybe not in 2024, but going forward, some of these endeavors might have some revenue streams associated with them to offset some of the costs of delivering those programs. Do you want me to do automated speed enforcement too?
Yes.
Okay, so the next summary is because of council's direction to incorporate the cost for 2 cameras in the 2024 budget. Wanted to just reiterate that we have commenced that analysis on the acronym C, automated speed enforcement. Council has had 2 different presentations before you and 2 different models. We have felt as the staff in the analysis to date that us administering a program that was run in-house is just not viable, whereby we would purchase cameras for all the reasons that you heard with that review, particularly with the LAS program, which has recently partnered with the city of Barrie and will be bringing on other participating municipalities, potentially mid to late 2024. So we estimated that it could potentially, even in that program, be not less than $100,000 per year, with no guarantee that there would be associated revenue offsets. While it's probably realistic that there would be some revenue, whether or not it would be full cost recovery is not yet something we've even been able to assess. So there will be a report on traffic calming and automated speed enforcement for council in November, so that you will be at that point, I guess, a little bit more within the budget process if there's any more redirections. But again, the challenges that we haven't accommodated within the 6% projected budget framework review, that could be accommodated. So that's just an FYI. And weekend transit, I've just addressed that in terms of the report you just heard less than 5 minutes ago. So I'll turn it back to Carrie.
Thank you. So Appendix 1 outlines the draft organizational chart, and Appendix 2 full motion the council can ask regarding the Parks and Rec Master Plan. And the 2024 budget draft budget does include many DC related projects that were identified in that plan. So on to page 6. In the 2024 budget, we've included the purchase of some new equipment to help us with the growing aspects of the town with respect to new streets and parks and recreation. So it includes a new plow truck for operations and a new pickup truck for parks and recreation. These items were identified in the 5-year capital plan, and they're both being funded by development charges. The problem that we're facing is that we still don't have the snowplow that we purchased in 2022 yet. So we're hoping the council will approve for staff to proceed with the RFP process to get this truck started, so that we might actually receive it in 2024. No guarantee, but maybe. And that we would be able to have a pickup for the summer. So this does deviate from our procurement policy, but as long as council authorizes that we go to RFP, it wouldn't be awarded until the budget was adopted anyway, but it just allows us to get that extra paperwork out of the way and get the ball rolling. With respect to the 5-year capital plan, staff are in the process of updating it. And in doing so, and also in conjunction with working on our asset management plan that is legislated to be updated in July 2024. We're finding that a lot of our replacement values are no longer valid, and the amount that is required to be put into reserves to fund future capital purchases needs to be increased. And that's just due to the recent inflation that we've all experienced with respect to everything. The other change we're going to make to the 5-year capital plan is we're going to remove the water and wastewater component out of it, and we will have 2 separate plans, because as you know, we just did our water rate study. So part of that water rate study includes a financial plan as well, which will be coming back to you in the coming weeks. So there's no sense duplicating that work across both plans. So that will all take place in the coming months. So long story short, what staff are asking for is that in order to fund those capital plans, we need to increase our transfers to reserves. In some cases, we are just maintaining what we're already doing, but there are some increases that are necessary in order to fund future equipment replacements. And as well as the town hall itself, the building itself, we've done a 5-year plan for, and you'll see that present the draft budget as far as what the building needs, interior and exterior, that hadn't been captured in the first 5-year capital plan. So there is considerable increase to that reserve, partially to help fund a roof replacement in 2028. And we've also increased the equipment reserves and the reserves to our workshop for the future expansion of the bays and that are set to take place in 2020. And last but not least is the tax policy review. The County of Dufferin hired a consultant to review countywide all of our tax ratios and our vacant land discounts. And through that review, there were a couple of recommendations that the consultant felt that we were lagging and falling behind on. Some of it was legislation that was passed as far back as 2016. The province started changing their vacant land discounts in 2019, but because the county sets those rules, the lower tiers just follow suit until the county makes those changes. So they've taken the initiative to hire this consultant on behalf of all of us. And we decided through the finance officers and supported that the vacant land and excess land discounts be eliminated for commercial and industrial tax classes. Historically, that reduction was 30%. So for those properties, which over in there are 24 properties that are affected by that, they would pay the full commercial and industrial tax rate instead of the reduced on the portion where they have vacant land or excess land. The other change is the multi-residential tax ratio. It currently sits at 2, and with the introduction of the new multi-res tax rate, it sits at 1.1. So it's not fair for the existing multi-residential taxpayers to pay a higher ratio than any new multi-residential. So we've proposed a 3-year phase-in reduction of that rate, so that by 2026 it will be 1.1 and in the new multi-res rate. And there are 13 properties in Shelburne that are affected by the multi-residential tax class, and coincidentally, quite a few of them are actually county owned. So any changes to ratios or discounts affects all the tax classes, because the amount that you need to raise from taxation doesn't change. It just redistributes who's paying what. So the chart that I put on page 8, it shows that by doing these changes together in the same calendar year, the net effect is actually that, like, it's felt less. Countywide, their numbers are different because it includes all of the county, not just Shelburne's assessment. When you factor in Shelburne's, we actually bring that number down. So on a $100,000 assessment, countywide, it would have been $2.21 would have been felt. But because the town's percentage brings that down, it's actually $2. So appendix 3 contains the full report of the report from the county treasurer, and it was approved at county council. So when they pass their bylaws, you will see those changes on it, and it ultimately affects them. So this data is just provided as information only, just so that everybody is aware. I have not factored those amounts into the other figures that I provided at the beginning of the report, because it does not affect tax base as a whole. That's the end of it.
Okay, thank you. So I think that for the benefit of councillors Gushardi and Sample, because I don't think we were doing this before. When did we start doing the framework?
2020.
Okay. I mean, basically, the intent here is for council to kind of give a few parameters to staff, just in terms of general rate increase and whatnot, while they're finishing off the draft budget, so that when they come back on the 30th with the draft budget, there's a couple of benchmarks we've already asked them to kind of meet. So that's what this intent, or what the intent of this is. And then after the 30th, we'll start actually going through, I guess, and if there's any changes to the draft, we can do those then. So any questions for Carrie on the framework, other than maybe the transit one, because we'll circle back to that. Councilor Bernardo.
Just a quick question, Carrie, on the framework, UOPP costing, it affects the framework in some form or way, I'm gathering as well, does it not?
Yes, actually, sorry, when I did mention all the boards and committees, that includes the police as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
And are we at the end of the transitional period?
this will be our last year. 2024 is the last year.
2024 is the last year. So next year will be when they tell us what the true costing is.
Yes, for 2025.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Councilor Sample?
Sorry, so back before, when I was on council, we used to see a couple of plans coming forward, like you'd see an example of a 1%, a 2%, a 3%. Is that not happening now? We see a 6% and we just tear it apart to get us down where we need to be. Is that we are playing how it works, or?
Well, so tonight, whatever percentage we ask staff to come back with in terms of the draft, they'll then present a draft based on that number. And then from there, I mean, we can add to it or subtract it. I mean, that's still council's prerogative.
Okay.
But the draft will be based on
A 6%.
on a maximum of whatever rate we.
Right, so
suggest
we used to have a few numbers thrown around, so we used to see a 3% would give us this is what we could do with the 3%. I'm just not sure if I'm just asking because I don't know.
Yeah.
Stop all that process and everything.
Yeah, we are doing it quite differently. So I mean, Councillor Chambers previously, I think, used to develop a couple of models.
Yes.
And then come back. So based on the numbers that we have, $99,000 is equal roughly to 1%. So,
Right.
so we know kind of, what level of change we would have to make to affect that rate.
Right.
So when the draft comes back, when it comes time to talk about additions or subtractions, that's the number kind of that we have to keep in mind in terms of moving that needle, when it comes to a percentage increase or decrease. Sure.
And just to clarify, as Carrie mentioned, through the mayor to Councillor Sample, 2.8% of this is not what we are making in terms of changing. So even if we were at 0, you're going to go up 2.8%. So just to put that in context.
Correct. Yes.
So, sorry. Clarify, we're not looking at 6% if we've already taken transit, we should be looking at a little less than 6%.
So that's what I was going to ask, Carrie. I mean, it's not quite 1%. So how would you prefer to change that first part? Not an increase not to exceed approximately 5%. Is that okay?
That would work, and we can, because in the coming weeks, there's going to be more information become available to us as well.
It's darn close to a percent,
Yeah.
but
And when we did do this budget framework in January, and it had, an increase not to exceed 1% at that time. And then when we did that, I did warn that 1% would come back to haunt you.
Like the first budget that this council did, yeah.
And if you do look at the 2023 adopted budget, and if you go out and look at the 2024 column, we are in line with what was projected at that time. And it was actually a 13% increase in the levy, which, because of the growth that we are fortunate enough to still be experiencing, we're able to take advantage of that growth, and it doesn't affect the taxpayer the same. So our levy is increasing, if you read it whole numbers, our levy is almost increasing 10%. So the levy is the dollars, money in the bank, is increasing 10%. But assessment growth increased 4%. So that's how we get to a 6% increase in the tax rate. So a home, any of our homes would experience a 6% increase in the rate in our tax dollars, because assessment hasn't changed again.
We're collecting 10% more than we were last year, but taxpayers are only paying 6% more than they were last year.
Correct.
Okay.
Only because we have growth.
Yeah,
which is
to offset that.
only out.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
That damn sewage treatment plant better get built.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Okay. So the motion is to receive the report and direct staff to prepare a draft 2024 operating budget to include an overall tax rate increase not to exceed approximately 5%. Include in the draft 2024 operating budgets 3 new positions, recreation programs, special events coordinator, operations analyst, and a utilities labor. Proceed with the RFP process for development charge eligible equipment purchases of a plow truck for operations and a pickup truck for Parks and Rec prior to budget adoption and in accordance with our policy, and to place the recommended increases to reserves in the 2024 draft budget to fund future long-term capital asset purchases and replacements. Applies $300 from the tax stabilization reserve in the draft 2024 operating budget, and to place $150,000 of the estimated 2023 surplus into the tax stabilization at the end. Sorry, what did I say? Oh, $300,000, yes, sorry, thanks, yeah, it's a minor difference. Yeah, and not to continue with the weekend transit, so we'll adjust the 6 to the 5 and then include, I guess, a statement there just to clarify that that's where that 1% is being made up. Okay, is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Fegan.
Approval on it too.
Seconded by Councillor Bernardo. Okay.
Just a question on it too. With us approving this, and is this a move forward with what the recommendations were in there? So you're gonna look at hiring a Parks and Rec associate, laborers.
So that'll come back in the draft budget.
Go back.
Yeah.
Draft.
Exactly. Yeah. So that basically just is instructing staff to include that in the draft, which will then get on the 30th. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Just. I just wanted. Just to make everyone feel better, we did not have to touch the tax stabilization reserve in 2023, and I'm not expecting that we will have to unless something serious happens between now and the end of the year. So the 300,000 that I'm proposing that we use in 2024 was not used in 2023, and I'm actually suggesting that we put more into that, because in the years where we don't have growth, we're really going to need it then. And then back to Walter's comment about lease savings. That's occurring in 2025, but I also do not have a draw from tax stabilization in that year. So our savings from the police is already reduced by 300,000. Because that's the risk you take, putting that money in there, don't have it next year.
All right, motions on the floor. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Yes, yes. So Denise raises a good point, that despite the fact that we're not going to move forward with the weekend transit beyond the end of this year. I think it is worth sort of giving kudos to Grey County for all the work that they did. And certainly the ridership, I don't think is any sort of commentary whatsoever on the service. I think if anything, it maybe just highlights the fact that the need for the service was maybe more perception than reality. Or something else, I don't know, but I certainly don't think it was a reflection on the service. It's just, you know, there isn't as much of a need there as people maybe thought there was. So, but until you try it, you don't know. And, you know, we gave it a good go. Okay, the last report is a recommendation from a resolution from our Parks and Rec Task Force regarding wind phones. To be honest, I wasn't sure what those were, so I'm glad the report was in there. Because I had no idea, so that's good. Okay, so the motion from the task force was moved by Councillor Sample. Dan, do you want to give maybe a quick explanation what it is?
Sure. So basically, your wind phone is just basically an old style phone set on a tree. And if you saw the reports, we would just walk up to it, call whoever they wanted to call, and have a conversation.
A theoretical conversation.
A theoretical conversation, because it's not hooked to anything.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just there for people just to go communicate and talk. Other than just talking to the tree, right? Holding the phone, talking to the phone. Thought it was a good idea, still think it is a good idea. But we would ask them to work with staff on proposing the better location, because there was a bunch thrown out there. Where the Parks and Rec was not going to give say yes or no to a specific location, because we know the amount of work that's going on in different areas of town. So we were just looking for direction from staff of where would be a good idea for them to work with. There's no cost to us. They're covering all the costs. They're doing everything. The committee is. They even have plans drawn up for the phones and the boxes and all that kind of stuff. So anything else, Lindsay?
No, I think that's pretty much it. They cover maintenance as well, so if the phone breaks or something like that. And as Dan mentioned, we were just considering more of a collaboration between us and or town staff and them, just to decide on a location that would be safe and accessible. So we didn't want to make that decision, obviously. You know, it may seem a little weird to some people, but if you look into it a little bit, you can see that I think it was CBC did the report. They did a news report on it, and they had a couple of families who utilize it in their hometown, and it actually, it'll get you teary. Like it'll just understanding and seeing the impact that it does create on their level of sort of transitioning through grief. So, you know, it may seem weird, but it really does impact, you know, people who are using it. So I know within our Parks and Rec master plan, we have the potential for a memorial garden. And, you know, once that might be established, then there's options or whatever for a second phone somewhere. But for right now, if we could, you know, maybe give one a go and see how it is, I think it could help some of the members of our community that might be processing grief right now and just need somewhere quiet to go and you know, have a conversation.
Okay. All right. Councilor Bernardo?
Two ideas sort of came to me. Cemetery, if you're talking about Greed, would be an excellent place for them to go because, people go there to see their loved ones. They probably with stress and whatnot would be one excellent place. Greenwood Park would probably be another excellent place. It is a very heavily utilized park. And I know at hard times, I'd probably pick up a phone and talk to somebody after some of the requests that I get. Yell at something. On, but, you know. Park is utilized quite heavily and I'm pretty sure that that is the one spot where, you know, if you're gonna put something of that nature in, that it being utilized the way it is, it might be an ideal spot. So that's just two ideas that came to me.
Okay. So the motion in the agenda was just to receive the report. I did like the bit that was added on to the one from the task force that essentially we asked staff to work with the Hills of Headwaters Collaborative. Sort out a location. Do you want to move a motion then? Okay. So to receive the report and ask staff to work with Hills of Headwaters. Okay. Councillor Wagner, do you want to?
Sure.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? It's carried. Okay. Thank you. Learned something new. All right, notices of motion. So I understand Councillor Gashardi has a notice of motion. Do you have it handy?
I have it.
Okay, can you read it out?
Okay, again. My apologies, long-winded.
Expect nothing less.
Okay. Oh, boy. Okay, whereas the growing sector of Shelburne's population is ever dependent on the Shepherd's Covered Food Bank as a backstop to food insecurity. And whereas the Shepherd's Covered Food Bank provides a vital service to community members in need of assistance. And whereas Shepherd's Covered Food Bank would moving forward benefit from a stable funding model as opposed to a traditional grant application process. Therefore, be it resolved, council directs staff to explore how Shepherd's Covered Food Bank can be incorporated into the town's budget as a yearly line item prior to the grant application process for 2025. Staff report should include any advantages or concerns in regard to implementing the above mentioned and recommend a potential dollar amount for this line item. Council requests staff to report back on this matter no later than April of 2024.
So that will be on the October 30th agenda then. Okay. All right, perfect. Any other notices? Councillor Bernardo.
Motion. I don't have it in front of me. I did send it in the hard part.
Be it resolved that council asks MTO to put in a slower speed limit on Highway 89 and 10 between the Mulmer-Melancthon town line and the current 50-mile-per-hour zone entering the town of Shelburne, slowing traffic down from 80 miles per hour before it comes to 50 miles per hour.
Okay. All right, so that will be on the next agenda as well. Okay. Anything else? All right. Communications. Councillor Bernardo.
Number 12, motion of support for the township of West Lincoln with issues regarding smaller communities and developments. I'll support a motion to support their motion regarding that.
Okay. Or seconder for that. Councillor Gashardi. All right, all in favor? Steve?
And number 12, a motion of support for the municipality of Blue Water regarding the availability of child care.
Okay, yeah, number 13, yeah. Okay. Seconder for that one. Counselor Wagner. In favor? It's carried as well. Okay. Anything else? Okay, can I just get a motion then to receive the rest of the items? Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Counselor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. All right, and a motion for confirming bylaw. Counselor Renato, seconded by Counselor Sample. All in favor? And motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Counselor Wagner.